And so in terms of critical thought, I started to realize that there was so much of my life experience that was locked in fight or flight. And I didn't know that I actually had a choice to have it any other way. And when I discovered that I could work with my own mindset in the way that nobody ever taught me I could or told me I could, that's when I realized, okay, there's something about brain function and how the brain operates that is important for us to know, and that we can actually control it and can control it a whole lot more than we know we can. And
Absolutely.
that's where all my coaching work came in, was the recognition of, especially in the corporate space, knowing I went through burnout and how much that impacts others. It's without our own ability to manage the stress of our day, we'll never know what abundance really and fulfillment truly feels like. We're always in that chase.
Absolutely. It's amazing to kind of take a step back, because I've done 12 years in the corporate industry, and to see how many people leave that industry due to lack of fulfillment, lack of clarity on truly, like, as an individual, speaking from my experience, I gifted a lot of professional time into that organization.
Yeah.
And, to allow this type of rethinking our reality, or creating choice around how we feel, how we operate, how we're showing up for ourselves ultimately in our own vessel, is
Yeah.
just life changing. And for me as a corporate individual, to have those tools now, if I was back in that place, to think of the change, the positive impact, right? Like, look, even looking at your, your business name, Clear Impact, it really is that. So it excites me hearing you speak about that, because I know that there's such a need for change in awareness in those environments, and not realizing that our environment is our third teacher, essentially, right?
Yeah. Every moment is there's so much potential. And I like how you used the word earlier, choice. If we don't know that we have a choice in the moment to be more present, to be more engaged in how we're interacting with the things that are unfolding in front of us, it's the classic deathbed regret, where you just wish you would have lived a little more.
Absolutely.
But if we don't know, so what is all that? And how do you actually start to tune into that? Well, that's the key, is we need the right methodology, the right system, and the right support structure in order to start to enter that space. And what is the space? Which presence for me is the ultimate. It's where everything else happens, the ability to live in this moment now. And if we are constantly under pressure and constantly trying to fix things and worried about things and fearful about things and anxious about things, you just don't know that space. You'll have moments of it, but it'll still be just out of reach. Oh man, I felt really good for that little moment here and that little moment there. Well, there's a way to cultivate a deeper relationship with it where it can be your dominant state. We just need to know how.
Yeah. And start to embody it, right? It's like, when we start to form a new habit, so to speak, or a new way of being, that 21 days, it's like, great, but we can't just say if I stop eating meat, all of a sudden I'm a vegetarian after 21 days, right? It needs some time to embody it and to integrate it. And I love how you now, not now, but it's part of your way of being also with your family, and teaching our young next generation of adults, how to really embody this practice, so that they do have a choice in how they want to think, feel, show up, and essentially regulating that nervous system, as you use the word optimization, I think is really key for that next generation as well coming in.
It's for me, it's the pinnacle, being able to understand how to regulate your own response to the stressors of your life. There's so many beautiful things that happen in the moments that you are able to do that. Absolutely. Create your own regulation. And the ultimate is, it puts you in a space of co-regulation. Co-regulation is, we all chase this idea of purpose, and, well, what's my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing? I'm supposed to have more meaning in my life. Well, that's, again, the brain optimizing those thoughts and creating a disruption in your nervous system that denies you ever having access to what purpose really feels like, which comes from presence. And the more present we are, the more we're in our own regulation, which ultimately manifests our ability to co-regulate others. When we find ourselves in a continual space of co-regulation for others, our family, our friends, our colleagues, our community, the world, then you start to feel purpose, because it's the highest frequency I've ever experienced as far as a feeling, to be in the presence of somebody else, knowing I'm whole and complete as I am, and holding space to feel their energy and be in contribution to where they are, and knowing I have an overflow to give them, an overflow of my own energy where I'm actually able to listen and be present with them. It's the greatest feeling.
It's so juicy. I find myself like there's moments of wave of emotion that come through because there's potency in that.
Yeah,
right. And
real.
creating, it's real. And I've gone through and experienced it as well, being a teacher, an educator, a professional, a coach, a mentor, but actually coming back home to the more, I would say, it's not doing all of this stuff and sharing it with people. It's this guided energy of embodying it and practicing it and being held in a container as well within your facilitation, going, Crystal, I see you as a coach. I see you as a high achieving individual. And sometimes we need that space too, to just melt and go, okay, what is actually going on around me? And I know I've manifested this. So what is actually happening for me here? But, sharing gratitude around the safety, I would say the ability to really explore as an individual, because for myself, speaking from my own experience, being that high level achiever, like seeking space to be vulnerable, to think of my own feelings, my own emotions, where are these things stemming from? I've always been there supporting other people. So to actually go inward and do the work and just observe from a place of curiosity and kindness, I think, my greatest exploration was, it is safe. It is safe for you to see yourself, Crystal. Yeah, it is safe for you to feel. It is safe for you to share and to really be acknowledged in this space versus always holding space for other people. It's like, can I hold space for myself? And that they're even sharing that, I get some soul bumps, because I think in my own development, there was this positioning of, could I truly be seen or see myself when I'm there being this version and holding space for others all the time? Can I actually see myself and take down those vulnerability walls and say, Crystal, it is safe for you to feel and to acknowledge what is going on inside. And that's where this embodiment started to churn, because I wasn't just avoiding those emotions. I was just feeling into them and really having a place to process. So I just wanted to bring that share in, because I think that there's a pivotal moment.
Oh man, it's significant.
Right. Of allowing ourselves to really explore within our own self.
Well, and that's the idea of this emotional rescue.
Yes.
I have, like many of us, have had a childhood where we have had experiences with stress as children. Okay, so outside of the context of what is the actual details of that, whether you were bullied, whether you were yelled at by a parent, for me, it was a real disconnect of feeling loved from my father and being told, all sorts of different names that he would call me growing up, whether he knew he was doing what he was doing or not. The impact was significant. Then going through being diagnosed ADHD and told I was learning disabled, put in a separate classroom. These were all moments that my brain was learning how to feed off of the thoughts my brain would produce to keep me stuck in the reactivity of the stress around those.
Absolutely.
And so the emotional pain of that really got me to a point where I had to shield myself as much as possible, not knowing it, but at the time you need to block any emotion because it's so painful. So if that's how you're growing up, and then all of a sudden you get into adulthood and there's all the other life stressors of adulthood, your finances and career and relationships and your health, and your brain is constantly learning more algorithms based off of the stressors of those. Now you're really stuck in this space where you're very, very much dominant in the emotional frequency of what you don't want. And so you manifest more and more of that. And then you follow what society tells you in terms of how you're supposed to get healthier. And yet it does nothing to help you to enter inward, to feel into the emotions of your body in a way where you can help support your ability to be okay with how things are. Not that you have to go back into the past, but how do you actually sit in your own emotional presence so that you can learn to be okay with the inner child that was so shielded and blocked off, so that you can then have space to start to explore all the possibilities that are in there. And that's again, I don't want to knock the system, but if we don't have the right support structure around us, we can't find our way inward that way to be able to start to let go of that, so that you can then start to operate from this parasympathetic state, which, that's as human beings, that's where we're meant to be experiencing life from.
Absolutely. And then the shift comes in with, you mentioned, the purpose and the pleasure and the joy and the abundance and, that higher level of frequency of being, and cultivating and magnetizing. Really, you're manifesting that through your thoughts, the feelings, and your emotions, and everything around you becomes this mirror, right?
Yeah.
So this, what are we seeing? And I've noticed in my world, I'm paying attention to the littlest things now. And paying attention to, even through working with yourself and doing my MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, and just really tuning into the little things around me. The awareness piece is I would say on high level, the more I'm getting out into nature and tuning into my breath, into my thinking, and bringing the vision to life, and all of this combined piece of my own. And now my children are joining, and I'm like, oh, and then my partner's like, hey, I've noticed you're feeling a little bit different. This has been, over the last year. And he's like, what's up? And I noticed that now that I've actually been able to process what's going on inside of me, I can share it with others from this place of overflow. Like you mentioned earlier, I really love that word and description, where I can only give when I'm in that overflow state. And so a few key nuggets and my takeaways too is just allowing myself to really be who I am. My whole life, I've heard you're too loud, you're too passionate, everything, when I speak, my hands and my energy, and that really dulled my sparkle for a long time, because I thought to myself, well, I'm not showing up how these people want me to show up. And it's just been in the last year of rediscovering my own personal practices and bringing it to life in my own coaching business has, I would say, really amplified my ability as a coach to speak from my own experience through transformation, and to speak from my own place of identity and seeing myself for the first time. What do I like? I actually know now what I like to eat, what my music is, not just because I want to pick what other people like.
And fit in.
Yeah, to fit in. And I feel like over the last year, I've really just started dating myself and getting to know myself on a deeper level by doing the work. From a lot of the the gifts that we kind of explored together. So thank you for that.
Yeah. And I think there's a big part of this too that we need to recognize, that it's not meant to be a cerebral experience.
Yes.
And so it's easy to say a lot of the words that we say about how we're experiencing our own, I would say, evolution, but it's a biological experience. So if we can start to recognize that, okay, so there's a intimate relationship that's happening 24/7 between the brain, the nervous system, and the heart. If we understand that and learn that there's ways that we can optimize that relationship, especially in modern society with the amount of stressors coming at us, especially as parents, with the added pressures of being a parent, and we can start to work with that relationship in real time. And I'm not knocking meditation, but it's not about the 20-minute meditation. It's nice. That's a nice thing, but that's not it. Your brain is still going 24/7. So we have to teach it to feel nourished. We have to teach the brain to feel loved, because it's still locked in the patterns of self-esteem, self-worth, shame, guilt from our childhood. That's disrupting how we're showing up now, and is also playing into the brain's desire to keep us locked in and trying to fix everything, which is the future-focused anxiety. So there's no space for presence when you're operating from a mind that is allowed to continue to run free like that.
Absolutely.
It's again, and it's not this idea of let's focus on being mindful. And I have a real adverse reaction to that word, mindful, because I don't,
Mhm.
knowing how everything has a frequency to it, every word we say, every thought we think, I don't want my mind to be full. I want to be restful. Let's
Yes.
learn to rest into the moments and notice the relationship between those beautiful parts of who we really are, because in that, then you start to create an energetic force that is undeniable in terms of how you get to feel and how you get to show up for others. And and I know you've noticed this, and most of my clients notice this, that the ultimate manifestations are two things. The two things you will manifest more of is, number one is nature. 100%. You'll find yourself in more spaces that have nature related to it. Awesome. And that's mainly because it has the similar frequency of presence. Makes sense. And the other one is the manifestation of being in service to others and learning to engulf your ability to be present with others in a way where it sparks your interest in how can I further serve this community without it being a self-sabotaging mechanism, which is what it is for most of us. Being in service is not from our overflow. It's part of self-sabotage. Well, how do you flip that? So now all of a sudden you're in that space of working from your overflow. You just have so much energy to continue to be creative with how you get to show up for those that you're manifesting. And when you're in that state of flow, it's important to know that that's a natural biological state of flow. It's not just the words we're saying, but we're really biologically in flow. And that's how we should live.
I love that. And I've also realized and recognized over the years that without being in that flow, and not being able to regulate my own self, you like sputter over like a tea kettle. Right? Things kind of sputter out, and being able to actually recognize being in that state. Like I'm looking at, the first 5 years of 3 children's lives.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And what I keep reminding myself is in the moment of time. I'm in this moment of time. This moment of time is never going to happen again. So how do I choose to move through it? What tools can I bring to the table now to help me from a regulated state? Because I can't change the way I'm thinking until I'm fully regulated here in my right. And so in the moment of time, when I'm in that state, what are my go-tos? Where do I go to bring it back home? How do I reconnect with it within myself? And that's definitely something that you bringing back to life here for me. And it was a matter of, in my own coaching and developing, it's like, it's that knowing doing gap. Crystal, you know this stuff, but are you doing this stuff? And that accountability is really important. Talk to me a little bit about unique challenges, if you may, because we're kind of moving into, just in your business as an entrepreneur, what could you identify as being some unique challenges to face?
Well, I mean, I think the number one unique challenge for everybody, whether it's business or just in everyday life, is discipline. It's being so disciplined with the practices that are working for you. And the reason why I say discipline is because the brain doesn't want you to be disciplined, especially in relation to feeling at peace, feeling calm. And if you're going to be a successful anything, parent, entrepreneur, whatever it is that you're striving to be optimized at and continue to elevate your experience with, if you're not disciplined in the practices that are working, you're going to be in trouble, because then the biological impact is the stress response. And so you start to lose access to the present moment if you're not disciplined. In my sense too, in all the work that I do and with my clients, it is discipline towards the creation of biological presence. It's not, let's be disciplined in waking up and doing our 50 push-ups and make sure we're disciplined with the new diet that we just started. And, it's not about how do I crunch all of these things in that are supposed to make me feel a certain way. It's being disciplined with feeling the way you want to feel all day, every day. And if you're not disciplined with that, your brain will block you from having access to it again and will try and create disruptions. And it takes something. It takes something too, because presence isn't difficult to cultivate a relationship with. It's quite easy if we have the right practices and then are disciplined with the practices. But as many of us know, our brain doesn't like us to know that space, doesn't want us to know what it's like to feel at peace, to feel calm. Every time there's a moment of space of maybe we feel boredom for a moment, or we feel like, man, I'm not really doing anything right now. I should probably get busy.
Guilty.
Guilty. Right? You feel guilty right away for not going faster and doing more. So it's being disciplined with practicing the right tools in the right order, having that support structure around you that are also engulfed in the same frequency with you, this co-regulation, and learning to be okay with rest. So it's discipline and rest go hand in hand.
Yes. And not just filling the schedule with something if something kind of leaves the schedule. I know I was guilty of that for a while. It's like I've cleared my schedule and I'm working at a different pace now, but I'm anticipating that like fullness, that my body was just like craving that busy, like there was something missing there, right? So I noticed that I was trying to fill my schedule instead of really tapping into and sitting with my relationship to rest. And that stillness and that calmness. And I think too, thinking back to my childhood, like I didn't ever want to be alone. So this relationship of getting to know myself, being alone, sitting with myself, hearing those internal thoughts. And as a busy mompreneur with 3 young children, you would often find me hiding underneath the stairs, finding myself a little mama time out to just find those moments to, because I was like having to find those moments versus the moments just being within me. And thank you for sharing, some of those challenges, because I think, a lot of the times we can just sit here and talk about all the positive things, and really it's bringing in those unique challenges and talking about some of the failures or talking about some of the things that we get smacked down and we come back up, but the story behind that, the lesson, the learning that is happening for us as we go through our own, as you call it, evolution. Can we talk a little bit about strengths that you found most helpful in running your business? Like if you could kind of take a step back and look at that from a different view.
Well, and again, for me, it always overlaps. Thinking in terms of me as a dad, me as a business owner, me as a coach, me as a athlete. The number one thing that allows me to continue to embrace my strength is my willingness to push into the leading edge of my mind. And so I seek them out. I seek things out that force me to notice what my mind is up to. And I first got into what I got into and discovered what I discovered through rock climbing. All right. So like this picture above me there from Yosemite.
Love that.
I rock climbing taught me how to regulate my stress response. It taught me that there was actually a way to start to work with my own biology that no therapist or counselor or ADHD medication ever taught me I could do. I'm not knocking that. But when I started to work with my stress response for hours and hours and hours a day, for years, being up on the side of some really big climbing walls, I had to regulate. And learning to regulate taught me that I'm so much more powerful than I was ever, my own mind would ever let me believe, but also more powerful than any methodology I was being told was how I'm supposed to get my health back on track. It was never the diet. It was never the fitness program. It was never the meditation practice or the medication or whatever that was. It was about learning how to manage my own stress response in the moments of life that it's happening. And so what I recognized through climbing was that obviously there's this beautiful biological impact, but it was the ability to push through what my mind was telling me wasn't possible and pushing through the fear. And so now most of my day is spent looking for opportunities to push my mind into that space again so that I can teach it through my nervous system to let go. And then it opens up this doorway of more expansion. Where can I now go with this new space I have to play with? And I think if we all knew that was a possibility in a way that we can do it safely for ourselves, you don't have to have rock climbing. And also you need to have emotional safety. You need to be in a space where you have some co-regulation with you to explore that. It's not just, let's just find any tribe or any community to support us. You want to have a supporting community that actually has the co-regulation ability for you.
That's so powerful. I've never done rock climbing myself, but you inspire me. I know you do some mountain climbing or mountain biking as well. And, for me, it's just getting out and like you say, being in nature and reconnecting to that part. I know that, stretching my limits for my mind right now also comes with sitting in that peace and silence with myself. And
Totally.
not putting the music on when I'm out fishing. I'm just listening to the water, listening to my own breath, and keep on rock climbing. I don't know, being up on the side of a mountain, just like my palms started to sweat. This is what's really interesting. Like when you were showing that picture too and talking about it, my
Yeah.
palms started to sweat. My
Yeah.
physical body was trying to tell me something. Like, I don't know if you're ready for this.
Right. And
That's
that's,
interesting.
and that's always happening in the background. We don't even realize when we're in our own stress response, how
Totally.
our shoulders start to
And
slug up
just
our.
noticing, thinking about being on the
Totally.
side of a cliff. It's like, whoo,
But we
there's
don't
energy
need to
there.
do, extreme fight
No,
or flight things. The main point is knowing that you have more control over your fight or flight response than you have been told you do. And the other thing is that most of us don't recognize that we're actually in it. We don't realize that the majority, 80% of our lives, is stuck in a fight or flight response. But you're going to know it based off of the symptoms, and the symptoms are mental and physical. You're going to have the mental symptoms of low cognitive energy, lack of focus, lack of motivation. More than anything, though, you're going to have irritability and frustration in how you communicate with those that you love most. You're going to have a lack of patience. Your body is going to be inflamed, whether you know it or not. You're going to have cravings, like my sugar addiction, where my book came from, was around how I transformed the sugar addiction. You're going to have hormonal imbalance and low energy. And so there's so much that comes from working with the nervous system in the moments of life that, yes, there's the health benefits, mental, physical, that are immediate. But for me, the biggest and most beautiful thing of it is the manifestation power of it, the ability to use your nervous system to start to play with your own emotional frequency and learn that that's the portal for manifesting more of that feeling that you want to have. To have the space to play with that, I think, is the most significant thing for us as human beings, that if we knew we could do that and what all that was really all about, we'd all want to do it.
totally.
It's not hard to do. It's just, again, it's like we need to have the right system and the right support structure to do it.
Well, and also being aware that what are you manifesting? Because
Yeah.
it could result in the other way for us, depending on how we're thinking and how we're feeling. And I've seen, in myself and in others too, that it's really a choice. But we don't know what we don't know. And we don't know that we can have a choice. So thank you for sharing, all of that with us today. And I'm curious, the future vision of your business, if we could just wave a magical wand, where are you headed, Adam?
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And as entrepreneurs, it's really important that we recognize that having a drive is one thing, having motivation is one thing. Having a vision for how you want it to be and how you want it to look is beautiful. It's very dangerous. This comes from my own experience of chasing with the best-selling book and being on stage 400 times and wanting it to be a certain way. There's a mechanism that the brain starts to operate from that learns from that this is the way it has to be. This is the way it has to be. So it starts to produce this stress response to it. If it doesn't show up that way, it's not right. That's not the way it's supposed to be. I'm supposed to have it this way. That's my vision. My intention is for it to be big and grand. And I want to be the next Tony Robbins, or I want to be the next Mel Robbins, or whatever that mindset is. For me, it's the biggest discovery over the last 10 years has been the ability to understand the power of removing the desire of the outcome.
Love that.
As the only way it can show up. It's the emotion that you're manifesting. So if you can use the intention, the vision, and recognize that it doesn't have to show up that way, but it's the emotion that it creates when I sit with it, that's what I'm manifesting. Well, then you have lots of space to explore into what you do want it to show up as, knowing that it doesn't have to be that way, but you're manifesting the emotion it creates.
Love
so
that.
For me, I'm mostly playing right now with an energy around working with deeper connection with dads And so I've created a whole new, and I've had vision rooms before, and I think we've talked about this before, but back in when I started to understand the nervous system regulation side of things, I recognized the power of how emotion relates to the experience, and started with a vision board that led to more and more. And then all of a sudden it was a vision room. And I've been playing with vision rooms for so long. So the latest one really has been engulfing myself deeper into releasing my own shield of needing to look like I've got all my stuff together, which is, there's no reality in that for anybody. Being more vulnerable, but then also holding more space for men and dads to allow themselves to do that as well. And so
Thank you.
my future vision has a lot of dad work involved.
That's so needed in this world. And if there's anyone that can bring it to life, I know it's you. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Any other advice you wanted to give to aspiring solo entrepreneurs that are just kind of either new to entrepreneurship, or they're in it and they're just looking for a little nugget from you?
Yeah, well, without having to try and be the big guru of, you got to do this and this, there's only one thing you need to do, and it's breathe. Just keep breathing, keep bringing consciousness to your breath. Stay calm, allow yourself to rest when you need to rest. We don't have to grind as much as society tells us we do, and the mind wants us to. Honor your rest and keep breathing.
So juicy.
And surround yourself with people like Crystal and myself.
There you go. Woo! I couldn't have said it better myself. Just kidding. Thank you so much for coming on and speaking with us here today, Adam. It's been a pleasure being in your space, working alongside with you. And I know that for our listeners here today, we're going to pop information in the info section below with information on how you can get a hold of Adam and some of the offerings that he's got. He's got a freebie for you all, little download. So it's called the 6 Steps to Unleash Your Energy Roadmap. Do you want to talk a little bit about that here today for our listeners?
Yeah. Well, it's taking what we discussed and putting a little more juiciness behind it, so that you can actually understand a little more of the steps that I've been playing with for 15 years, the steps that all our clients go through when they come into the Unleash Your Energy program. And so, I look forward to folks who resonate with this message going and grabbing a copy of that at the website, clearimpact.io.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure for all of our listeners here today. Thanks so much for tuning in. Adam, really appreciate you, your time, and everything that you're bringing forward to this world. And I hope to hear from you again soon.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.